a man covered in his own wine stain, a restaurant full of people who turned away, and one waitress who spoke the words that should have been impossible for her to know. Have you ever said something without understanding its true weight? Le Miroir didn't just serve food, it served status, wrapped in white tablecloths and crystal that caught the light like diamonds. The kind of place where a single reservation could take 6 months, where the waitstaff moved like shadows, and where certain tables in certain corners were always kept empty. Until he needed them, Chairman Kwan entered through the side entrance that Thursday evening, and the restaurant's pulse shifted. Not stopped. That would have been too obvious. But changed, the way air pressure drops before a storm. He was older than most of the clientele, perhaps in his 70s, with silver hair swept back from a face that might have been kind once, before time and choices had carved it into something else. His hands trembled slightly as he walked, and his expensive gray suit hung just a fraction too loose on his frame. He didn't look like a monster. That was the first lie. The maître d' guided him to the corner booth with practiced deference, the kind of respect that came from knowing rather than guessing. 2 men in dark suits took up positions near the entrance, their hands never quite relaxed, their eyes never quite still. Chairman Kwan settled into the leather seat and reached for his wine glass. That's when it happened. The glass tilted. Red wine splashed across pristine white silk, spreading like blood across fresh snow. His hand jerked back, trembling worse now, and something flickered across his face. Not embarrassment. Fear. The restaurant pretended not to notice. Conversations continued at the exact same volume. Forks touched plates with the same delicate precision. But eyes watched. Eyes always watched. A junior server approached, professionally concerned. "Sir, let me—" The chairman's mouth moved. Korean syllables, soft and rushed, tumbled out in a voice that cracked with something raw. The server froze, smiled apologetically. "I'm sorry, sir, I don't—" More Korean, faster now. The chairman's fingers clutched at the napkin, pressing it against the stain. But his movements were wrong, uncoordinated. His breathing quickened. The maitre d' appeared, diplomatic smile in place. "Sir, if you'll allow us to." He gestured toward the exit, the suggestion clear. The drunk old tourist act had worn out its welcome. The security guard materialized, all 240 pounds of him, hand already extended toward the chairman's shoulder. That's when the chairman went rigid. His eyes widened, pupils dilating. His whole body locked into absolute stillness, the kind that came from trauma, from muscle memory of survival. The guard's fingers were inches away. "Don't touch him." Every head in the vicinity turned. Lillian Adams stood near the service station, one hand gripping her order pad hard enough to wrinkle the paper, the other already reaching for a clean napkin. 24 years old, hair pulled back in a neat bun, her dark skin catching the warm light. She'd worked at Le Miroir for 8 months, kept her head down, arrived early, left late, never inserted herself into situations above her pay grade. Until now, she moved between the guard and the chairman before anyone could stop her, her body language non-threatening but absolute. She knelt slightly, bringing herself to eye level with the trembling man, and then she did something that would change everything. She bowed. Not a casual nod, but a full, respectful 90-degree bow, the kind that took practice to make look natural. Then she spoke, her voice gentle, her Korean accented but clear. "Harabioji. Eolugun gegerim ilpun ibnida. Dangsine bich ul chaj ul su iske dawa du lijes subnida." Grandfather. "The stain is just a shadow. Let me help you find the light." The restaurant might as well have stopped breathing. The chairman's eyes locked onto her face. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. Then, impossibly, his eyes filled with tears. He reached out with shaking hands, not for the napkin she offered, but for her wrist, gripping it with desperate strength. "Iotioge?" he whispered. "How?" Lillian's pulse hammered, but she kept her voice steady. She gently extracted the soaked napkin from his grip and replaced it with a clean one, guiding his hand to press it against the stain. "Gujos yun guanchan subnida. Jegayogi is subnida. It's all right. I'm here." The maître d' stood paralyzed, his practiced composure shattered. The guard had backed up 3 steps, uncertainty radiating from his stillness. The two men in dark suits by the entrance had gone taut as wire, hands moving inside their jackets. That's when the main doors opened. The temperature in Le Miroir dropped 10 degrees. Jun Ki-kwan didn't walk into a room. He invaded it. 36 years old, 6'2" of controlled violence wrapped in a black suit, worth more than Lillian's yearly rent. His dark hair was swept back with precision, his jawline sharp enough to cut, and his eyes, God, his eyes, were the kind of black that didn't reflect light, just absorbed it. Those eyes found his father first, then found the black woman kneeling beside him, holding his hand. The world narrowed to that moment. Junki's expression didn't change. That was somehow worse than rage. As he crossed the restaurant in long, predatory strides, his bodyguards flanked him, but he didn't need them. The threat was in his bones, in the way people's survival instincts screamed run when he got close. He stopped 3 feet from the table, looked at his father's tear-stained face, looked at the ruined shirt, looked at Lillian. "Who are you?" His English was perfect, his accent barely there. But the question landed like a blade. Lillian stood slowly, forcing herself to meet those obsidian eyes. "Lillian Adams. I'm a server here. Your father was..." Speaking Korean to strangers. Junki's gaze never left her face. "How convenient. I was helping. Were you?" He stepped closer, and Lillian could smell expensive cologne mixed with something darker. Gunpowder, maybe. Or fear. Hers, not his. "My father suffers from senility. Confusion. People who take advantage of that confusion tend to disappear." The chairman's grip tightened on Lillian's wrist. He spoke rapidly in Korean, his voice stronger now, almost childlike in its insistence. Junki's eyes flickered with something Lillian couldn't read. Surprise, maybe, or suspicion. He responded in Korean, his tone sharp. The chairman shook his head violently, pulling Lillian closer, speaking faster. "He says he won't leave without you." Junki's voice was flat, stating a problem that needed solving. "He says you spoke the family words, that you're his guide." A pause, weighted with menace. "Where did you learn that phrase?" Lillian's throat went dry. "My ex-boyfriend taught me some Korean. I was trying to calm him down. He taught me a poem about shadows and light. I added the word for stain because I remembered it from a laundry commercial. I was improvising. Your ex-boyfriend." Junki pulled out his phone, typed something with sharp, efficient movements. "Name. I don't see how that's name. Now. Daniel Kwan. But he died 3 years ago, so I don't see." Junki's fingers stopped moving. His face, already unreadable, became a mask carved from stone. The silence stretched so long that Lillian heard her own heartbeat pounding in her ears. When he spoke again, his voice was soft, deadly soft. "Daniel Kwan was my brother." The restaurant tilted. "He ran away from the family 7 years ago. We were told he died of an overdose in Seattle." Junki leaned down, and Lillian could see her own reflection in those black eyes. "You're telling me you knew him? That he taught you our family's private motto? I didn't know it was..." "What else did he teach you? What else did he tell you about us?" "Nothing. We dated for 6 months. He taught me some Korean phrases because I wanted to learn. He died, and I kept studying because I promised him I would. That's all." Junki studied her like she was an equation that didn't balance. Then he looked at his father, who had stopped crying but was clutching Lillian's hand like a lifeline. "How much?" Junki asked. "I'm sorry? How much money will it take for you to come with us? To care for my father until he stabilizes?" The maitre d' materialized at Lillian's elbow, his face pale. "Mr. Kwan, I assure you, our staff is not..." "I'm not asking her employer. I'm asking her..." Junki pulled out his wallet, extracted a black credit card. "Name your price." Lillian should have said no. Should have walked away from the trembling old man and his terrifying son. Should have gone back to her section, her tables, her normal life of polite smiles and decent tips. But she looked at Chairman Kwan's face, at the desperate hope in his ancient eyes, and something inside her cracked. She thought about Daniel, who died alone. About promises made to people who never came home. "I have student loans," she heard herself say. And my mother's medical bills. 80,000, total. Junki didn't blink. Done. But not 80. 500,000. The room spun. What? You pacified the mad dog of soul. You spoke words you shouldn't know. You're either the best actress I've ever seen, or you're telling the truth. His smile was razor thin. Either way, you're too valuable to leave in a restaurant. Consider your debts purchased. He turned to the maitre d'. Bill her final wages to this card. She no longer works here. Sir, you can't just... I can. I did. Junki finally looked away from Lillian, and the maitre d' physically flinched. Unless you'd like to negotiate, the maitre d' stepped back. No, sir. No negotiation necessary. Lillian's head spun. I need time to think. No. Junki gestured to one of his men, who approached with a tablet. A contract appeared on screen, dense with legal text. You think while you read. Sign here. You'll live in our family home, care for my father, and in return, every debt you have disappears. Refuse, and you walk out that door right now with nothing. He leaned close enough that she could feel the heat of him, could see the tiny scar above his left eyebrow. But my father won't let go of your hand. And when I have to forcibly remove you, he'll spiral. So really, Miss Adams, the question is, how much is your conscience worth? It was blackmail dressed as opportunity, a cage painted gold. Lillian looked at the contract, at the chairman, who watched her with desperate, ancient eyes. At her own reflection in the tablet's dark screen, she signed. Junki's smile was victorious and joyless. Welcome to the family, Miss Adams. He snapped his fingers, and one of the bodyguards produced a sleek black coat, draping it over her shoulders. The car is waiting. Welcome back, my fierce hearts and midnight dreamers. Before we dive in, make sure you're subscribed, hit that like button, and tell me where you're watching from. I love seeing our little dark romance family stretch across cities, countries, and time zones. Every click, every comment, every bit of love you leave here helps us keep unraveling these dangerous love stories and high-stakes betrayals together. So find your quiet place, dim the lights, and get ready. Let's begin. The ride to the Kwan estate was a study in contrasts. Lillian's cramped studio apartment could have fit inside the SUV's back seat with room to spare. The leather was butter soft, the interior temperature perfectly regulated, and the windows were so dark she couldn't see out. A rolling sensory deprivation chamber. Chairman Kwan sat beside her, his hand still clutching hers with surprising strength for someone supposedly fragile. He murmured in Korean, fragments of sentences that sounded like prayers or confessions. Lillian caught words she recognized. Sun, shadow, light, forgiveness, but couldn't piece them into coherence. Junki sat across from them, silent, watching, always watching. His gaze felt like a physical weight on her skin, and she found herself hyper-aware of everything, the way her uniform shirt pulled across her shoulders, the rapid pulse at her throat, the silver locket hidden beneath her collar. She touched it through the fabric, a nervous habit. Junki noticed. Of course he noticed. What's that? A locket. It was a gift. From Daniel. Not a question. A statement of fact that landed like a punch. Yes. Show me. Lillian's hand tightened protectively over her chest. It's personal. Nothing is personal anymore, Miss Adams. You signed that away when you took my check. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, and the space between them evaporated. Show me or I'll take it. She believed him. Slowly, she drew the chain out from beneath her collar. The locket was small, silver tarnished with age, engraved with Korean characters she'd never been able to translate. Daniel had always deflected when she asked what they meant. Junki's expression shuddered completely. He reached out, and Lillian flinched, but he only lifted the locket with surprising gentleness, turning it to catch the dim interior light. His jaw worked like he was chewing glass. Where did you get this? I told you. Daniel gave it to me. This locket belonged to my grandmother. It was buried with my brother. His eyes lifted to hers, and they were void black, empty of everything except cold fury. So either you're a grave robber, or my brother gave you our family's most sacred heirloom before he died. He released the locket, and it fell against her skin like ice. Which means he trusted you. Loved you, maybe. His voice dropped to something barely audible. That makes you either very dangerous or very useful. I haven't decided which. He leaned in close, his voice barely a breath. Hide it. Under your shirt. If my father sees that silver, he'll kill you before we reach the bridge. Keep it hidden, Lillian. Always. The estate was a fortress disguised as luxury. 30 floors of steel and glass overlooking Manhattan, every window reinforced, every entrance monitored. Lillian counted 6 security checkpoints before they reached the penthouse level. Each guard armed, each one nodding with military precision as Junki passed. The penthouse itself was a study in minimalism and menace. White marble floors, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the glittering city, and furniture that looked like it belonged in a museum. Everything was sharp angles and cold surfaces. Nothing soft, nothing warm. Junki led her down a hallway that seemed to stretch forever, their footsteps echoing. He stopped at a door, withdrew a keycard, and gestured her inside. Your room. Your room. It was larger than her entire apartment. King bed with white silk sheets, a bathroom with marble and gold fixtures, a walk-in closet already filled with clothes in her exact size. A cage, but a gilded one. The clothes are for you, Junki said from the doorway. Tomorrow morning, someone will come to brief you on my father's routine. You'll accompany him to meals, to his medical appointments, to wherever he needs to go. You will not leave this building without my permission. You will not contact anyone from your previous life. You will not speak to the other staff about family business. He paused, and something almost like regret crossed his face. And you will not try to escape. Why not? He pulled the door closed, and she heard the lock engage from the outside. His voice came through the wood, muffled but clear. Because I'm not ready to decide what to do with you yet. Lillian stood alone in her beautiful prison, the check still clutched in her hand, and wondered if Daniel had felt this same trapped, suffocating fear before he died. Morning came with a soft knock. Lillian jolted awake in the too-soft bed, disoriented by silk sheets and the absence of traffic noise. For a moment, she forgot where she was. Then memory crashed back, and with it, the weight of her new reality. The knock came again. Miss Adams? I'm here to help you prepare for the day. A woman stood in the doorway, mid-50s, Korean, her face professionally neutral. She introduced herself as Mrs. Song, the estate manager, and proceeded to explain the household rules with clinical efficiency. The estate doctor will visit you within the hour for a mandatory health screening and blood draw. Standard insurance protocol for all new residents. Do not refuse him. Breakfast at 7. The chairman's medication schedule. Appropriate attire for different occasions. The rooms that were off limits, which turned out to be most of them. Lillian absorbed it all while her mind spun. The door was locked last night. Mrs. Song's expression didn't flicker. For your safety, Miss Adams, the estate has many security protocols. Protocols that lock me in? Protocols that keep dangers out. Mrs. Song's gaze sharpened. Mr. Kwon has many enemies. You are under his protection now. That means following his rules. Chairman Kwon was waiting in the breakfast room, seated at a table that could have hosted 20 but held only 2 place settings. He looked different in the morning light. Smaller, frailer, the tremor in his hands more pronounced. When he saw Lillian, his face transformed with childlike joy. "Nai," he murmured. "My child." Lillian slipped into the role like a costume. She bowed, spoke gentle Korean, helped him with his tea. He told her rambling stories about Seoul, about his childhood, about sons who disappointed him, and sons who left. His words wandered, circling back on themselves, and anyone listening would hear only the confusion of senility, but Lillian watched his eyes. And his eyes were calculating, sharp, tracking every movement she made with predatory focus. Later, when she helped him to his room for his afternoon rest, he gripped her wrist with sudden, vicious strength. The tremor vanished. "You have his eyes," he said in perfect, unaccented English. "My youngest son's eyes, kind eyes, lying eyes." Then the confusion returned like a curtain falling, and he was shuffling and weak again, calling for his blanket. Lillian's blood ran cold. That night, unable to sleep, she explored the boundaries of her cage. The penthouse was a labyrinth of hallways and locked doors, but eventually she found the library. 2 stories of books, leather chairs, and a fireplace that looked like it had never been used. She was reaching for a book when a voice cut through the silence. "Can't sleep?" She spun. Junki stood in the doorway, jacket gone, shirt sleeves rolled to his elbows, revealing forearms corded with muscle and marked with scars. He held a crystal tumbler of amber liquid, and his hair was slightly disheveled, like he'd been running his hands through it. "I'm not used to this." Lillian gestured vaguely at the opulence around them. "No, you're used to struggling." He moved into the room, and Lillian found herself backing up until her spine hit the bookshelf. He noticed, and something predatory flickered in his expression. "You're afraid of me again." "I thought we were past that." "We're not past anything. You bought me. I bought your debts. There's a difference." He took a sip of his drink, eyes never leaving hers. "Though I admit, the line is blurry. Why am I really here, Junki? Because my father won't let you go." "No. The real reason." He set his glass down on a side table, and suddenly he was moving toward her. Each step deliberate, giving her time to flee. She couldn't. He stopped when they were close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from his body, could smell whiskey and something darker underneath. Rage, maybe, or hunger. "You want the truth?" His voice dropped to gravel. "My father is playing a game I don't understand. You're a piece on a board I can't see, and I hate not knowing the rules." His hand came up, and Lillian's breath hitched, but he only reached past her to pull a book from the shelf. His arm brushed her shoulder, and electricity arced between them. "But every time I see you with him, I feel something I haven't felt in years." "What?" He looked at the book in his hand, leather-bound, Korean poetry, and something vulnerable cracked through his armor. Relief. Like maybe there's still something in this family worth saving. He handed her the book, and their fingers touched. Neither pulled away. "Daniel used to read from this. He was the only one of us who still believed in beauty." Lillian's throat tightened. "He talked about you. Not by name, but he said he had a brother who carried the weight of the world because no one else could." Junki's jaw clenched. "He left us, chose death over family. He chose freedom over prison. There's a difference." "Is there?" His thumb stroked across her knuckles, and the touch was so gentle it hurt. "Because right now, you're in a prison, Lillian. A beautiful one, but still a cage. And I'm the warden." He leaned closer, and she could see gold flecks in his dark eyes, could feel his breath against her cheek. "But I wonder, who's really trapped? You or me, watching you on these monitors, unable to stop thinking about the way you stood between my father and danger without hesitation. Junki, I shouldn't want you. You're everything I can't afford to want. But God help me, I do." His hand cupped her face, rough palm against soft skin, and Lillian's eyes fluttered closed. "Tell me to stop. Tell me this is wrong." It was wrong. Completely, utterly wrong. But when she opened her eyes, she said, "I'm not afraid of you." His control shattered. He kissed her like drowning, like salvation, like violence wrapped in silk. His mouth claimed hers with bruising intensity, and Lillian met him with equal ferocity, her hands fisting in his shirt, pulling him closer. He groaned against her lips, backing her harder against the bookshelf, and the poetry book tumbled to the floor, forgotten. Then he wrenched himself away, breathing hard, eyes wild. "This is a mistake. Then why did you kiss me?" "Because I'm damned either way." He picked up his abandoned drink, drained it in one swallow. "Go to bed, Lillian. Before I do something we'll both regret." She went, but sleep was impossible. She lay in the dark, fingers touching her swollen lips, and wondered if Daniel had warned his brother about her, if that's why Junki fought his attraction with such desperation. Across the estate, in a room Lillian had never seen, Chairman Kwan sat in front of a bank of monitors. He watched his son pace the library like a caged animal, watched the waitress toss in her bed, unable to rest. He smiled, and the senility vanished completely from his eyes. "Found you," he whispered to the image of Lillian's locket, frozen on screen. "Now let's see if you survive what comes next." 3 weeks passed in a strange, suspended reality. Lillian cared for the chairman during the day, listening to his rambling stories, helping with meals, watching him play the role of confused elder with unsettling perfection. And at night, she avoided Junki with equal determination, though she felt his presence everywhere, a gravity well pulling at her even through walls, until the night he appeared at her door at midnight, dressed in a full tuxedo, holding out his hand. "Come with me." Lillian stood in her sleep shirt and shorts, confusion warring with something dangerously close to anticipation. "Where?" "Somewhere my father's eyes can't reach." His expression was unreadable. "Trust me, just this once." She shouldn't have. But she took his hand. The rooftop garden was a secret Eden, 30 floors above the city's chaos. Fairy lights strung between trellises, exotic flowers blooming despite the season, and a view that made Manhattan look like scattered diamonds on black velvet. A table was set with silver and crystal, candles flickering in the breeze. "What is this?" Lillian breathed. "An apology. For the cage. For the monitors. For stealing your life." Junki pulled out her chair, and when she sat, he leaned close enough to whisper against her ear. "For wanting you when I have no right." The meal was intimate, charged with unspoken tension. He asked about her childhood, her mother's illness, the dreams she'd abandoned when reality intervened. And slowly, impossibly, the terrifying Mafia boss dissolved into something more human. A man who'd inherited an empire at 19 when his father declined, who'd made choices that haunted him, who carried scars both visible and not. "I never wanted this life," he admitted, wine loosening his carefully guarded words. "But Daniel ran, and someone had to hold the kingdom together. So I became the monster our father trained me to be." "You're not a monster. You don't know what I've done, Lillian. The people I've hurt, the orders I've given." His hand found hers across the table. "But when I'm with you, I remember what it felt like to be human." That's when he stood, pulling her gently to her feet, and led her to the rooftop's edge. The city sprawled below them, a living thing of light and shadow. "There's trouble coming," Junki said quietly. "Federal trouble. They've been building a case against the family for years, and they're close to making moves." He turned to her, and his eyes held something she'd never seen before. "Fear. If you testify against me, even unknowingly, everything falls apart. I wouldn't." "I know. But I need to make sure." He took both her hands, and his grip was gentle but desperate. "Marry me, Lillian." The world tilted. "What?" "Marry me. Be my wife. Let me protect you the only way I know how." He pulled a ring from his pocket. A black diamond set in platinum, dark as his eyes, as the secrets that bound them. "I'm not asking for love. I'm asking for survival. Yours and mine." It was insane. Impossible. Everything about this was wrong. The speed, the circumstances, the man himself. But Lillian looked at his face, at the vulnerability he was offering like an open wound, and heard herself say, yes. The wedding was a quiet affair in the estate's chapel, witnessed only by Mrs. Song and 2 guards who Junki trusted with his life. Lillian wore a dress that appeared in her closet, white silk that clung to her curves, elegant and understated. Junki wore black, as always, but his eyes when he saw her held something close to reverence. The vows were traditional, spoken in English and Korean. When the officiant said, "You may kiss the bride," Junki cupped her face with both hands, thumbs stroking her cheekbones, and kissed her with devastating tenderness. This wasn't the desperate, hungry kiss from the library. This was a promise, a claim, a surrender. The wedding night began with champagne and low lighting in the master suite, a room Lillian had never entered before. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city, and the bed dominated the space, massive and draped in silver silk. Junki poured 2 glasses, handed her one. Their fingers brushed, and neither pulled away. "You're my wife now," he said, and the word sounded foreign in his mouth, like he was testing its weight. "That means something to me. More than you know. What does it mean to you?" He set down his glass, moved closer. "It means you're mine, and I don't share." His fingers found the zipper at her back, pulled it down with agonizing slowness. The dress whispered to the floor, pooling at her feet, and his breath hitched. "God, Lillian, you're—" She silenced him with a kiss, rising on her toes to reach him, her hands working the buttons of his shirt. He groaned into her mouth, lifting her effortlessly, her legs wrapping around his waist as he carried her to the bed. What followed was incendiary, a collision of desperate need and careful restraint, Junki's hands mapping her body like territory to conquer and worship simultaneously. He was surprisingly gentle, attentive to every gasp, every shiver, learning her responses with focused intensity. When they finally came together, it felt like completion, like two broken pieces forming something whole. After, they lay tangled in silk sheets, Lillian's head on Junki's chest, his fingers tracing abstract patterns on her shoulder. His heartbeat was steady beneath her ear, and for the first time since entering this world, she felt safe. "I could get used to this," she murmured. His hand stilled. "Lillian, we could leave, you know. Take your father somewhere quiet. Let the empire fall. It's not that simple. Why not?" She lifted her head to look at him, and something in his expression made her stomach drop. "Junki?" He sat up, pulling away from her, and suddenly there was distance between them that had nothing to do with physical space. He reached for his pants, pulled out a cigarette, lit it with shaking hands, walked to the window, his back to her, smoke curling into shadows. "The FBI is building a case," he said, each word careful. "A RICO case that could put me away for life. They'll come after everyone close to me, try to flip them, force testimony." He took a drag, exhaled slowly. "Spousal privilege means you can't be compelled to testify against me. Even if they arrest you, torture you, you can't be forced to speak." Ice flooded Lillian's veins. "What are you saying? This marriage?" His voice was flat, emotionless, the Mafia boss mask sliding back into place. "Is a legal strategy. A subpoena shield. That's why I proposed, Lillian. Not because I love you, because I need you silent." The words hit like physical blows. Lillian grabbed the sheet, wrapped it around herself, suddenly feeling naked in ways that had nothing to do with clothes. "You're lying." "I wish I was." He finally turned, and his eyes were empty, dead. "What just happened between us was pleasant, but it doesn't change the reality. You're an asset, and I'm protecting my assets. That's all this is." Lillian's vision blurred. "Get out." "This is my room. Get out!" The scream tore from her throat, raw and broken. He left without another word, and Lillian collapsed onto the bed that still smelled like him, like them, and sobbed into silk pillows that muffled nothing. She'd been so stupid, so naive, thinking a monster could change, that she could be the one to save him. She'd sold her soul for a legal loophole. And the worst part? She still loved him. The nausea hit 3 weeks after the wedding. Lillian barely made it to the bathroom before her stomach emptied, leaving her shaking and clammy on the cold marble floor. She told herself it was stress, grief, the weight of living in a beautiful lie. But when it happened again the next morning, and the next, she couldn't deny the truth. She was pregnant. The revelation came with no joy, only cold terror. She was carrying the child of a man who'd used her, married her as a legal shield, and now she was bound to him in ways that went beyond any ring. Lillian stood in front of the bathroom mirror, hand pressed to her still flat stomach, and wanted to scream. She couldn't tell Junki. Not yet, maybe not ever. That night, unable to sleep, Lillian wandered the estate's dark hallways. The security had grown lax over recent weeks. She'd proven herself docile, compliant, a good little prisoner. She moved through shadows, and that's when she heard the voice. Chairman Kwan's voice, sharp and clear, unslurred by confusion. Lillian pressed herself against the wall outside his study, heart hammering, and listened. "Don't care about the judge's connections. He's blocking the harbor acquisition. Deal with him. Make it clean." A pause. "No, not an accident. I want his family to know it was us. Send a message." Horror crawled up Lillian's spine. This was the chairman's voice, but not the confused, wandering elder she'd been caring for. This was steel and menace, the voice of a man who ordered deaths over breakfast. "And the FBI investigation?" The chairman continued. "Let them come. My idiot son married the girl, just as I knew he would. Spousal privilege is in play. They have nothing." Lillian's breath caught. She'd been part of the plan all along. "The girl doesn't suspect. She thinks I'm senile, that she's here out of kindness. Foolish child," a dark chuckle. "But she serves her purpose. speaking the motto, carrying the locket. She's the perfect bait. My youngest son's last gift before I disposed of him. The room spun. Disposed of him. Not overdosed. Disposed. Lillian backed away from the door, hand clamped over her mouth to muffle her gasping breaths. She needed to run, to escape, but her body wouldn't obey, frozen in the hallway like prey before a predator. She made it back to her room, locked the door, and spent the rest of the night planning an escape that had no exit. Morning brought the chairman's routine: breakfast, medication, gentle conversation. Lillian played her role, smiled and bowed and spoke soft Korean, all while her mind screamed. The old man watched her with roamy eyes, trembling hands reaching for her assistance, and she wanted to shatter the teacup over his head. "Such a good girl," he murmured, patting her hand. "My spirit guide, my light in the darkness." Later, when she helped him to his room for his afternoon rest, he gripped her wrist, not with the vicious strength from before, but gentle, almost paternal. "You're pale, my dear. Are you well?" "Just tired, Harabioji." His eyes sharpened. "Just for a moment. You should rest more. Take care of yourself. You're eating for two now." Ice water in her veins. "What?" The confusion returned like clouds covering the sun. "What? What did I say?" He looked around, bewildered. "Where is my tea?" "I asked for tea." Lillian fled. She locked herself in her bathroom, pulled up her shirt, stared at her flat stomach in the mirror. He couldn't know. It was impossible. She'd only just realized herself, unless he'd been monitoring her that closely. Watching everything, the knock on her bedroom door made her jump. "Miss Adams? The chairman wishes to see you in his study." Lillian's hands shook as she dressed, prepared herself for whatever horror waited. She walked to the study like a condemned woman to the gallows, and when she entered, the chairman sat behind his massive desk, the picture of confused elderly man. Except his eyes. His eyes were predator sharp. "Sit." "Not a request." She sat. "You're carrying my grandchild." He said it as fact, not question. "I can always tell. Watched my wife through 2 pregnancies. You have the look. Pale, tired, glowing beneath the fear. I don't know what. Don't insult me with lies, child." He pulled a folder from his desk, opened it. Inside were medical records, blood work results she'd never authorized. "I have people everywhere, including your doctor's office. The pregnancy test came back positive 3 days ago." "You've been too scared to check." Lillian couldn't breathe. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I'm changing my will." He pulled out a legal document, slid it across the desk. "This child you carry is the future. Pure Quan blood, untainted by my son's weakness. I'm cutting Junki out. Everything goes to the baby. You can't. I can do whatever I please. This is my empire." He leaned forward, and the mask dropped completely. Junki was always too soft, like Daniel, but this child, born of necessity and strategy, will be shaped from birth to lead, and you, dear girl, will raise it for me. "No. No?" He smiled, and it was the expression of a snake. "You think you have a choice? You're in my home, surrounded by my men, married to my son under my design. Every move you've made since walking into that restaurant has been choreographed by me." He stood, walked around the desk with surprisingly steady steps. "No tremor now, no weakness. You carry the future inside you. Try to run, and I'll cut it out myself. Try to tell Junki, and I'll have you committed. Who would believe you? The paranoid waitress claiming the senile old man is the real power?" He gripped her chin, forcing her to meet his eyes. "You're mine now, Lillian. Body, soul, and womb. Accept it." He released her, returned to his desk, and the confusion returned like a costume. "Why are you crying, my dear? Did I upset you?" "Oh, I'm such a foolish old man. Please, please, have some tea." Lillian ran. She made it to her room, locked the door, and pressed her back against it, sliding to the floor, her hands instinctively wrapped around her stomach. Protective, and she whispered desperate promises to the life growing inside her. "I'll get us out. Somehow, I promise." But the walls were closing in, and she knew the truth. She was trapped in a web spun by a monster who'd been playing chess while everyone else played checkers, and she'd just become the most valuable piece on the board. Lillian avoided Junki for 3 days after the chairman's revelation. Easy to do in an estate this size, with routines that kept them apart. But the pregnancy was getting harder to hide. The exhaustion, the nausea, the way she unconsciously touched her stomach when she thought no one was watching. She needed to tell him. Not about his father. She couldn't prove anything, and who would believe her? But about the baby. He deserved to know. Even if he'd only married her as a legal shield. She found him in his office, late at night, surrounded by paperwork and the blue glow of multiple monitors. He looked up when she entered, and something in his expression softened before he could stop it. "Lillian, we need to talk." He gestured to the chair across from his desk, but she shook her head. Some conversations required standing, required the ability to flee. "I'm pregnant." The words hung between them like smoke. Junki went absolutely still, his face draining of color. "What?" "I'm pregnant. About 5 weeks, I think." Her hands twisted together. "I know this complicates everything. I know the marriage was just—" "Stop." He stood, came around the desk, and before she could retreat, his hands were on her face, tilting her head up. "You're carrying my child?" "Yes." Something fierce and possessive blazed in his eyes. "Then nothing is complicated. You're my wife. This is my child. That's all that matters. But you said—" "Forget what I said." His thumb brushed her cheekbone, and his voice dropped to something raw. "I lied, Lillian. I married you for the legal protection. Yes, but that's not why I wanted you. I wanted you because you make me remember what it's like to be human. Because I'm completely, obsessively in love with you, and I didn't know how to admit it without terrifying you." He pressed his forehead to hers. "And now you're carrying my baby, and I—" The office door burst open. One of Junki's lieutenants, face pale with panic. "Sir, we need to move. Now. There's been a breach." The explosion cut off his words. The world became noise and fire and flying glass. Junki's body slammed into Lillian's, driving her to the ground, his weight crushing and protective simultaneously. She felt him jerk, heard his grunt of pain, and then there was only ringing silence and the smell of burning. "Junki?" Her voice came out wrong, distant. She touched his back, and her hand came away red. He rolled off her, and she could see the shrapnel embedded in his shoulder, his side, blood spreading across his white shirt like blooming flowers. "Get up," he gasped. "Car bomb. They're coming. Get up." More explosions rocked the building. Gunfire echoed from somewhere below. Lillian struggled to her feet, grabbed Junki's arm, and together they stumbled toward the panic room she'd been shown during her first week. The lieutenant was dead in the doorway, half his face gone. They didn't make it to the panic room. More guards appeared. Loyal ones, Lillian hoped, and formed a protective circle. They got Junki to the medical wing, and that's when Lillian saw how bad it was. Blood everywhere. His breathing shallow and wrong. The doctor barked orders, and someone tried to pull Lillian away, but she fought like a wild thing. "I'm his wife. I stay." The surgery took hours. Lillian stood against the wall, covered in her husband's blood, one hand pressed to her stomach where their child grew, and prayed to a god she wasn't sure existed. When it was over, the doctor's face was grim. "He's stable, but he's not waking up. Could be hours, could be days. He will wake up," Lillian said with absolute certainty, because the alternative was unthinkable. But days passed, and Junki remained lost in whatever darkness held him. The estate became a fortress under siege. Rival families smelled blood in the water, and the lieutenants circled like sharks, arguing over who should lead, who had authority. Lillian sat by Junki's bedside, held his unresponsive hand, and whispered everything she'd never said. "I love you. I'm sorry I didn't say it before. Please come back. Our baby needs you. I need you." On the 3rd day, the lieutenants came to her. "Mrs. Kwan, we need decisions. The harbor deal, the federal investigation, the territories. Handle it," she said without looking away from Junki's face. "With respect, you're just the wife. You don't have authority." Something inside Lillian snapped. She stood, turned, and looked at these men who'd served the Kwan family for decades. "I'm not just the wife. I'm the one who speaks the family motto. I'm the one the chairman calls his spirit guide. And I'm the mother of the heir to this empire. She pointed at the unconscious man in the bed. You will handle your duties, or I will find people who can. Am I clear? She looked at the lieutenant named Lee. And for those who betray this family, follow the standing protocols. I don't care how harsh they are. Execute the penalty. They left, chastened. That night, the chairman appeared in the doorway. The mask was gone. He looked at his unconscious son with something that might have been regret in a man capable of such emotion. Who did this? Lillian demanded. One of my lieutenants. He thought with Junki gone, he could take control. The chairman smiled. He was wrong. I've already had him dealt with. You mean killed? I mean dealt with. He looked at her, and his expression was almost fond. You're stronger than I thought. Good. You'll need that strength for what comes next. Which is, my son will wake up, and when he does, he'll go to war. The question is, will you be his weapon or his weakness? Lillian looked at Junki's still form, at the machines keeping him alive, at the future growing inside her. I'll be whatever he needs me to be. The chairman's smile widened. Good girl. 2 days later, Lillian learned the lieutenant's name, Lee. He'd been with the family for 20 years. Trusted, reliable. The chairman had his body dumped in the harbor with a sign around his neck. For betraying the Kwon family. Lillian had ordered it, and she felt nothing. The girl who'd been a waitress just months ago was gone. Burned away in fire and blood. In her place was someone harder. Someone who could look at death and not flinch. Someone who could survive in this world. When Junki finally woke on day 7, his first word was her name. His second was, the baby? Safe. She promised, and kissed him like he was oxygen. I heard you, he murmured against her lips. When I was under, I heard everything you said. Then I know you love me, and I know you ordered Lee's execution. His eyes held hers. I'm proud of you, and terrified for you, because once you cross that line, Lillian, there's no going back. She thought about the girl she'd been, serving wine to people who never saw her. She thought about Daniel's locket, about promises made to the dead, about the life growing inside her that needed protection. Good, she said. I don't want to go back. 2 months of slow, agonizing recovery, and Junki was finally back in meetings, running the empire from his bed when the doctors wouldn't clear him for walking. Lillian stayed close, played the devoted wife, all while feeling the pregnancy symptoms intensify. The baby was 14 weeks now, a small secret growing larger every day. She was reviewing the harbor contracts, because apparently she reviewed contracts now. When Junki woke from his afternoon nap, she moved to his side immediately, helped him sit up, adjusted his pillows. He caught her hand, pulled her down for a kiss that started gentle and quickly became something more desperate. The doctor said no strenuous activity, she murmured against his mouth. The doctor can go to hell. His hand slid to her waist, and she winced. He pulled back immediately. What's wrong? Nothing, I'm just... But his hand was already moving, finding the small swell of her stomach that was becoming impossible to hide. His eyes widened. You're showing, a little. He stared at her stomach like it held the secrets of the universe. And then he did something that broke her heart. He smiled. Actually smiled, real, and unguarded, and beautiful. We're really having a baby. We really are. He pulled her down onto the bed beside him, careful of his injuries, and wrapped around her protectively. I'm going to be a father. You're going to be a mother. We're going to... The bedroom door opened. The chairman stood there, lucid and sharp. Junki, we need to discuss the federal situation. Not now, father. Yes, now. The old man's eyes flicked to Lillian, and she saw the calculation there. Unless you'd rather discuss it in front of your wife? Junki's jaw tightened. Give us a moment. Lillian rose, kissed his forehead, and left them to their dark business. But she listened at the door, because she'd learned that survival meant knowing everyone's secrets. The FBI is moving faster than anticipated, the chairman said. They'll make arrests within the month. You need to prepare. I am prepared. Lillian can't testify. No, but she's becoming a distraction. You're soft around her. Weak. I need you focused. She's my wife, the mother of my child. She's a liability. The chairman's voice dropped to something cold. Handle it, or I will. Lillian backed away from the door, heart racing. She knew what handle it meant in this world. She had two options: run or fight. She chose wrong. That night, she packed a bag, just essentials, nothing that would be noticed, and planned to slip out during the early morning guard change. She'd go to a women's shelter, claim domestic violence, disappear into the system until the baby was born. Then, she didn't know. One step at a time, but when she tried to leave her room at 4 a.m., the door wouldn't open. She was locked in. And when dawn came, Mrs. Song appeared with breakfast and a message. Mr. Kwan is being transferred to the hospital for follow-up surgery. He asked that you stay here and rest. I want to go with him. I'm afraid that's not possible, Mrs. Kwan. The woman's expression was sympathetic but firm. Doctor's orders. Lillian was trapped again, but this time felt different, more final. Mrs. Song whispered the news as she collected the dinner tray. The chairman has gone to the secure wing for his dialysis. The cameras in your corridor are looping for the next 10 minutes. If anything is going to happen, it must happen now. Junki returned 3 days later. Lillian waited in their bedroom, practicing what she'd say, how she'd explain her attempted escape. But when he walked through the door, something was wrong. He looked at her with confusion. Who are you? The world stopped. Junki, this isn't funny. I'm serious. Who the hell are you and why are you in my bedroom? He turned to the guard behind him. Get her out of here. Sir, this is your wife. My wife? He laughed, and it was cruel. I don't have a wife. I would never marry. He looked her up and down with undisguised disgust. Anyone like her. Get her out. Lillian's legs gave out. The baby. Junki, I'm carrying your baby. I don't know you. His voice was flat, final. And I sure as hell never touched you. Whatever game you're playing, it's over. He gestured impatiently to the guard. Remove her from the premises. Give her whatever money shuts her up, but I want her gone. They dragged her out. Not gently. She fought, screamed his name, begged him to remember. But his expression never changed. The man who'd held her, loved her, whispered promises against her skin. That man was gone. In his place was the monster everyone feared. They dropped her on the street outside the estate. As the guard shoved her, he pressed a heavy envelope into her hand, hidden from the cameras. From the boss, the guard muttered, his cruelty dropping for a split second. Run. Lillian stood on the Manhattan sidewalk at 9 p.m. Inside the envelope wasn't just $500. There was a burner phone, a key to a storage unit, and a note written in hasty handwriting, I'm sorry. Lillian Adams, Mrs. Kwan for exactly 2 months, stood on the Manhattan sidewalk at 9 p.m., 4 months pregnant, and felt her heart shatter into pieces too small to ever reassemble. She walked, didn't know where, just walked, until her feet brought her to the only place that made sense, Le Miroir, where this nightmare began. She stood across the street, staring at the elegant entrance, and wanted to laugh at the cosmic joke of it all. Her hand drifted to the locket she still wore. Daniel's locket, the chairman's locket, the key to everything. She pulled it open for the first time since Daniel's death. Inside were 2 photographs, one of a young boy with kind eyes, laughing at something off camera. The other was a map, not a detailed map, just a simple line drawing of streets, and an X, and Korean characters she couldn't read. Lillian had enough money for a cheap motel room and a Korean translator app. She took a photo of the characters, ran them through the app, and the translation appeared, where father hid the evidence. Her breath stopped. Daniel hadn't run away to escape the family. He'd found something the chairman needed hidden, and that's why he died. And he'd left the proof with the one person no one would suspect, his American girlfriend who couldn't read Korean. Lillian sat on the stained motel bedspread, hand over her growing stomach, and made a decision. If Junki had truly forgotten her, if that part of him was gone, then she had nothing left to lose. But she could make sure the monster who'd orchestrated everything, who'd killed Daniel, who'd threatened her child, finally faced consequences. She would find the chairman's evidence, and she would burn his kingdom to the ground. The motel room cost $40 a night, and Lillian stretched her $500 as far as it would go while she planned. The map in the locket led to an address in Queens, a storage facility that had closed 5 years ago, now just a rusted shell behind a chain-link fence. It wasn't a rental unit. It was a private shipping container purchased under a shell company, paid up for 20 years. Daniel had planned for the long game. She went at night, scaled the fence despite her growing belly, and found the unit number marked on the map. The lock was still intact, but rusty. She broke it with a rock and a lot of determination. Inside were boxes, documents, financial records proving the chairman's empire was built on arms dealing, extortion, and murder. Evidence that would bring down not just the Kwan family, but half the city's criminal infrastructure. Daniel had been gathering proof, probably planning to go to the FBI, when the chairman discovered his betrayal. Lillian photographed everything with her phone, the cheap burner she'd bought with her last $20. Then she called the only person she could think of, her old roommate from college who'd become a journalist. "Maria? It's Lillian. I have a story for you. But we need to meet somewhere public, somewhere safe." They agreed on a coffee shop in Midtown. Noon the next day. Lillian would hand over the evidence, Maria would run the story, and the chairman would finally face justice. Lillian allowed herself to hope. She was walking back to the motel, cutting through the alley behind Le Miroir, because apparently she couldn't help revisiting the scene of her downfall, when she realized she wasn't alone. 3 men, blocking both ends of the alley. "Mrs. Kwan," the center one said, and she recognized him, one of the chairman's personal guards. "You've been difficult to track. I don't go by that name anymore. Doesn't matter what you call yourself. You're carrying Kwan blood. The chairman wants it." He pulled a knife, and the streetlight caught the blade. "We can do this easy, or we can do it hard. Either way, the baby comes with us." Lillian's hand went to her stomach, protective and desperate. "Please, just let me go. I'll disappear. You'll never hear from me again." "Not an option. Orders are orders." She tried to run, but they were faster, trained for this. Hands grabbed her arms, slammed her against the brick wall. The knife blade pressed cold against her throat, high enough to be lethal, far enough away to keep the baby safe. Lillian closed her eyes, whispered an apology to the child she'd failed to protect. Then the world exploded into violence. A figure emerged from the rain, because of course it was raining now. This whole disaster scene needed rain, and what followed wasn't a fight. It was a massacre. Junki moved like death itself, each strike precise and brutal. The knife clattered to the wet pavement. Bodies followed. In 30 seconds, it was over. The guards were dead or dying, and Junki stood in the rain, blood mixing with water on his hands, his face, his clothes. He turned to Lillian, and his eyes were wild, feral, nothing like the empty confusion from before. "Did they hurt you?" She couldn't speak, couldn't process, just stared. He crossed the distance between them, hands hovering over her body like he was afraid to touch, checking for injuries without making contact. "The baby? Is the baby? You remember me." The words came out broken. "I never forgot you." His hands finally settled on her face, cradling it like something precious. "I had to make you leave, Lillian. My father knew I was investigating him. Knew I was going to move against him. As long as you were in that house, you were a target. The amnesia." His voice cracked. "It was the only way to get you out without him suspecting. I needed him to think you meant nothing to me. You threw me away. I saved your life." The words came out harsh, desperate. "You and our baby. I couldn't protect you there, not with his eyes everywhere. But out here, where you were nothing to him, you were safe." Tears mixed with rain on his face. "Until he figured out you had the locket, that you knew about Daniel. Then he sent them. How did you know where I was? I've had people watching you since the moment you left. Do you think I'd actually let you go? Let you face the world alone, pregnant, with no resources?" His laugh was bitter. "I'm a monster, Lillian, but I'm your monster. And I protect what's mine." She wanted to hit him, curse him, make him hurt the way she'd been hurting. Instead, she kissed him with all the rage and relief and love that had been tearing her apart. He kissed her back like drowning, like salvation, arms wrapping around her, careful of her stomach, and they stood in the rain surrounded by corpses and made promises that tasted like blood. "We're ending this," Junki said against her mouth. "Tonight. My father's reign ends tonight. I have evidence. Everything Daniel collected." "I know. I've been building my own case for months." He pulled back enough to look at her. "But evidence brings FBI, lawyers, trials. That's not how this family works." "Then how?" His smile was blade sharp. "We take it all. Every territory, every lieutenant, every connection. We don't destroy the empire, Lillian. We claim it. Together." She thought about the girl who'd served wine, who'd been kind to trembling old men, who'd believed in redemption. That girl was dead, murdered in an alley behind a restaurant that never knew her name. What do I have to do? The Kwan estate at midnight was a different beast. Lillian and Junki entered through the service entrance, the one place his father's surveillance had a blind spot, an oversight from decades ago that Daniel had discovered and never shared with anyone but his brother. Junki moved like a ghost through his own home, Lillian following close. They gathered allies first, guards who'd served under Junki for years, who were loyal to him rather than the chairman. Quiet conversations in dark corners. Promises made and kept. By 2 a.m., they had 12 men. Enough. The chairman was in his study, predictably. The old man never slept, just sat in his chair like a spider in a web, monitoring screens and making calls. Junki and Lillian entered without knocking. The chairman looked up, and his face split into a smile. "Junki, you remembered. How touching." His gaze slid to Lillian. "And you brought the pregnant traitor. Even better." "It's over, father." Junki's voice was steel. "I know about the black market trades. The murders. What you did to Daniel. Daniel was weak. He would have destroyed everything I built." The chairman stood, and his hand was steady, holding a gun that seemed to materialize from nowhere. "Just like you're weak, letting a woman make you soft, make you question." "I'm not questioning anything." Junki stepped forward, and 6 guns cocked behind him, pointed at the chairman. "I know exactly what needs to happen." The chairman's laugh was genuine, delighted. "You're going to kill your own father? After everything I taught you?" "No." Lillian stepped forward, and every eye turned to her. "We're not killing you. That would be mercy." The chairman's smile faltered. "We're committing you," Lillian continued, "to a state facility. You'll be diagnosed with advanced dementia, a danger to yourself, and you'll spend the rest of your days exactly as you pretended to be, confused, helpless, trapped in a mind that no longer works." Understanding dawned in the chairman's eyes, followed by fury. "You can't." "I already have." Junki held up a tablet. 2 doctors have signed off. The paperwork is filed. The transport arrives in 1 hour. The chairman swung his gun toward Lillian. "Then I'll kill her, and the brat she's carrying. If I can't have my empire." Lillian spoke, her voice carrying across the room in clear, perfect Korean. "Harabeoji, Beach ul chajuzeo, grandfather. Find the light." The family motto. The words Daniel used to say to him when he was young, before the monster consumed the man. The chairman's hand trembled, and for just a moment, confusion crossed his face. Real confusion, not the mask he wore. In that heartbeat of hesitation, Lillian pulled the trigger. Not to kill. She shot his shoulder, exactly as they'd planned. The gun fell from his hand, and he collapsed with a cry of pain and shock. "That's for Daniel," she said quietly. "And for every life you destroyed to build your kingdom." The transport came. Medical personnel who asked no questions because they were paid not to. They loaded the chairman onto a stretcher, sedated him when he started screaming about empires and betrayal. His last words, as they wheeled him out. "You'll become me, Junki. You'll see. Power corrupts, and you're already corrupted. That baby will doom you both." Then he was gone. The empire needed a leader. The lieutenants gathered at dawn, expecting Junki to take his father's chair. Instead, he and Lillian walked into the conference room together, his hand on the small of her back, her head held high. Junki gestured to the head of the table. "Gentlemen, allow me to introduce your new boss." Lillian sat in the chairman's chair, the one that had held power for 40 years. She placed her old Le Miroir name tag on the mahogany surface, a reminder of where she came from, who she'd been. "I know what you're thinking." she said, looking at each face in turn. Who is this woman? This outsider? This. She smiled. Waitress who thinks she can run an empire. Silence. I'm the woman who kept the chairman docile for months, who learned your codes, your networks, your weaknesses while serving you tea. I'm the woman who carries the heir to this family. Her hand rested on her stomach. And I'm the woman who's going to drag this organization out of the shadows and into something resembling legitimacy. Not because I'm good, but because I'm smart enough to know the old ways are dying. One of the older lieutenants stood. And if we refuse? Junki stepped forward, and the threat was implicit. Then you'll meet the same fate as Lee. Choose. One by one, they bent the knee. The next 6 months were a brutal education in power. Lillian learned to speak the language of violence without flinching, to order actions she'd once have considered unthinkable, to sleep at night despite the blood on her hands. The FBI investigation collapsed without the chairman to target. Spousal privilege held. The empire shifted under Lillian's guidance. Still criminal, but more strategic, more careful. The illegal arms trading ended. The most brutal enforcers were quietly retired. Not redemption, exactly, but evolution. Her daughter was born on a cold January morning. Junki held her with tears streaming down his face, and Lillian watched her husband become human again in the presence of this tiny, perfect creature. They named her Danielle, for the uncle she'd never meet. The epilogue came 1 year later. They'd exiled themselves to a remote seaside village on Jeju Island. Not running, just stepping back. Let the lieutenants run the day-to-day. Lillian and Junki would remain in the shadows, pulling strings when needed, but raising their daughter far from the darkness. The bar they opened was small, intimate. Lillian served drinks with the same grace she'd once served wine to people who never saw her. But now they saw her. Everyone did. She was changing Danielle's diaper when the letter arrived. Heavy paper, sealed with a stamp she recognized immediately. The Kwan family crest. Inside, a single photograph. Their bar. Taken from across the street. No words, no threats, just proof. He knew where they were. Junki loaded the gun while bouncing the baby on his hip, his face grim. He escaped, or was released. Lillian looked at the horizon, at the perfect blue of the Mediterranean, and felt the shadows creeping back. What do we do? We survive. Like always. He kissed Danielle's head. But this time we do it together. The shadows were waiting. They were always waiting. But so were they. Does true love require becoming a monster? Or is it the only thing that saves us from the darkness? The line between the two is written in blood, and Lillian Adams crossed it the moment she spoke words she didn't understand to a man who'd been waiting for her arrival. Some cages are made of gold. Some are made of promises. And some are built from the choices we make when the world gives us no good options. The question isn't whether we'll be trapped. It's whether we'll choose our cage or let someone else build it for us.